In the city of Aloria, life was a perfectly gray, predictable rhythm. The rhythm was set by the echoes, a vast collection of ancient, undisputed rules etched onto brass plates in the central square. The echoes dictated every moment of existence. The hour of awakening, section 4a, the permitted meal, section 9c, and, most importantly, the mandated silence, section 2f, which lasted from dusk until dawn. These rules were enforced by the city elders, known only as the Voices, who taught that the echoes were the only barrier between Aloria and the chaos of the outside world. To question the echoes was not just a crime. It was an act of madness, a betrayal of the safety that defined their lives. Kale was an apprentice in the city's printing house. His job was to reprint the smaller booklets of the echoes, his hands stained with the same gray ink that colored their clothes and buildings. But Kale's mind was not gray. He was restless. He saw things the echoes did not account for: the stubborn joy of a wildflower pushing through the cobblestones, the unplanned flight of a bird, the way the sunlight changed color at sunset, long after the mandated silence had begun. One afternoon, driven by a gnawing emptiness, Kale broke section 1a, the boundaries of the city shall not be crossed. He slipped past the unmanned west gate and walked until the city's gray smudge was a memory. He found himself by a dried-up riverbed, and there, sitting on a sun-baked stone, was Aloria. She was an untethered, one of the handful of exiles the city had cast out decades ago for asking questions. Kale approached nervously. "They say the world out here is chaos," he said, repeating the echo. Aloria laughed, a sound like dry leaves scattering on stone. "They gave you that thought, didn't they, little printer? You came here carrying their words. What if you tried to make one of your own?" She pointed to the dry riverbed. "The echoes say the river is gone. But I say it is merely waiting for the rain. Which thought feels more true?" She tapped her temple. "They built a prison, Kale, but they forgot to build a roof. Your mind can still fly. The real revolution isn't in pulling down walls, it's in thinking over them." Kale returned to Aloria, his heart pounding with a terrifying, electric new sensation, an original thought. He began his silent revolution. He didn't shout, he whispered. While mending the printing press, he asked his fellow apprentice, Lyra, "Section 5b says we must only find joy in communal service. But, did you not feel joy when you tasted that wild honey yesterday?" Lyra froze, looking around in terror. That was contentment," she recited. "Was it?" Kale asked gently. "It looked like joy to me." The next day, Lyra was seen looking at a bee with a strange, contemplative smile. The seed was planted. Kale's questions were like drops of water on dry earth. He asked the baker, "The echoes forbid a new recipe. But what if a new ingredient would make the bread better?" He asked the gatekeeper, "The echoes say the west is barren. But I saw green hills. How can both be true?" The whispers spread. They were simple, logical, and impossible to ignore. People started looking at the echoes not with reverence, but with curiosity. Why must we only wear gray? I dreamt of blue. Why must the music stop when the sun sets? The mental revolution had begun, and it was terrifying the Voices. The elders dragged Kale to the central square for a public trial. The brass plates of the echoes gleamed accusingly around him. "Kale, the printer!" the high elder bellowed, his voice amplified by the square's acoustics. "You have unleashed the plague of why upon this city. You have infected us with doubt and brought the shadow of chaos to our walls." Kale stood tall, his gray apprentice robes suddenly looking like a disguise. He did not look at the elder, he looked at the crowd. "I have infected no one," Kale replied, his voice clear and calm, carrying to every corner. "I only offered a mirror. You say I brought doubt. I say I brought thought. You praise the echoes, but an echo is just a tired, fading copy of an original sound. Where did the original sound go?" He pointed to the crowd. "Lyra," he called out, "did your dream of blue bring chaos, or did it bring a desire for beauty?" He looked at the baker. "Did your thought of a new bread bring anarchy, or a hope for improvement?" A profound silence fell over the square. It was not the mandated silence of the echoes. It was the heavy, thrumming silence of hundreds of minds waking up at once. The crowd wasn't just listening to Kale, they were listening to their own reason. The High Elder shouted, "Seize him! He speaks madness!" But the guards did not move. They were looking at their own gray sleeves as if seeing them for the first time. The baker, a timid man named Fen, stepped forward and placed a small, round loaf of bread, studded with unfamiliar herbs, at Kale's feet. That was the verdict. The trial was over. The revolution was quiet but absolute. The next day, Lyra wore a ribbon of blue, woven from a hidden thread, in her hair. That evening, for the first time in centuries, a flute played a soft melody after sunset. The echoes were still etched in the brass plates, but they had lost their power. They were no longer rules. They were just suggestions from a distant, fearful past. Aloria was still standing, its walls intact, but its people were finally free, not because they had torn down the prison, but because they had unlocked the doors of their own minds.